Since our last recording, there's been just more and more developments with Draymond Green. Obviously, since then, we saw the Rudy Gobert incident that actually started between Jaden McDaniels and Klay Thompson 2 minutes in. Jaden is known to be a hothead. We remember that in frustration due to an ejection last year, he broke his hand by punching a wall, and definitely has some impulse control, so a lot of players like to target him and really get him riled up and force him out of the game due to an ejection. He's very valuable for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's one of their best wing defenders that they have, and Klay at this point really tried to poke the bear. He got a lot out of him. Jaden McDaniels lost his cool, basically ripped apart Klay Thompson's uniform. And then in the scuffle, you see Rudy Gobert trying to separate. He, I think, very briefly grabbed the neck of Klay Thompson just because he is so much taller. We remember that Rudy Gobert is like 7'1", Klay Thompson's about 6'7", and there's a height difference there. So it maybe looks like he's choking him. It looked like he was going to grab his shoulders just to pull him off. And then Draymond comes in, jumps on Rudy, and gets him into a very vicious chokehold. I mean, this is around the neck, arm is right there, and cutting off air. I mean, there was no tap out, but it was definitely a precarious situation for Rudy Gobert, not a basketball play. It resulted in Draymond's ejection and later suspension for 5 games. Now, Draymond's a repeat offender, and I mean, choking, I don't think that 5 games is enough. In my opinion, I think a 10-game suspension, make an example out of him, because he's a repeat offender. And I mean, the Warriors, they didn't suspend him because they were defending champs and they didn't want Draymond to miss out on ring night, so he was given a hefty fine, whatever the case may be. He's had incidences with Steve Kerr, who did call him out in the post-game press conference because he can't do that. And for a guy of Steve Kerr's caliber, I mean, he's known as the guy that got punched by Michael Jordan in his days with the Bulls, and he has a big reputation for being a little bit more of an understanding person and coach, even because he dealt with issues with Draymond in 2016, and he's had to manage Draymond's temper throughout his coaching career. Regardless, Draymond isn't really the most controllable player, right? He is a loose cannon. He has no wherewithal or sense of holding things back, maybe thinking a little bit before acting. Joe Dumars is now one of the heads of the disciplinary board of the NBA, so he was the one that handed out this suspension. They obviously are pretty close beforehand, and for Draymond, there's just so many times I view this thing as more than being a hard-nosed player. It's just more selfish. This is a repeat offense, and he's done this countless times, and I honestly view it as selfish. He's celebrated for being a tough, hard-nosed player, and we need that. We need the Rodmans. We need Draymond's tough-nosed defense on the court. But there's also this that you have to hold your emotions in check, because you got to know how valuable you are to your team. And when you act out like that is unfortunately a very selfish act that also it compromises your team. This happened in 2016. It wasn't the one incident with LeBron James swiping at his groin. It was the 2 kicks to Steven Adams' groin that went over the Fagelin foul point limit in that postseason run. He got ejected for the stomp on Domantas Sabonis last year. I mean, countless things. And Rudy Gobert was actually pointing out something, that the amount of times that Draymond gets suspended is more likely when Steph is out. When Steph is there, Draymond's pretty much intact. He will still do Draymond type of shit. But when Steph is out, at least, Draymond, I guess, maybe doesn't want to really suit up and play. He just does his own thing. And there's no real thing where I haven't heard him apologize to his teammates. I haven't heard him apologize to the Warriors organization. There's been times where he's always big on his podcast, and he will routinely say that what happens here isn't applicable to me. Fine. But there's no accountability, there's no self-accountability, and that's where I think he's a very, very selfish player and person. At the end of the day, people will have their opinions of Draymond Green. Mine is always that he is a guy that has all the talent, but he's also part of the Warrior system, and his actions cost them not only championships, but could have been one of the best all-time dynasties as well.